The Memphis Grizzlies were down 15 points. Then Jaren Jackson Jr. took over, and Vince Williams Jr., and Santi Aldama, and several other Grizzlies players that they overcame a 15-point deficit to beat the Philadelphia 76ers. But impressive than more than those names, because we've seen those guys shine. Jake LaRavia, another double-double in 2 consecutive games. We got to talk about Jake LaRavia. He's been playing well as of late, but we'll get into it. Let's do that right here. Coming up on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies each and every day, and especially today, as we recap a second consecutive win for the Memphis Grizzlies, this time a 115-109 win against the Philadelphia 76ers in comeback fashion. Both of these teams were down some of their best players. The Grizzlies, it's well documented at this point, playing without John Morant, Desmond Bane. They traded Steven Adams. They traded Xavier Tillman Sr. No Marcus Smart. No Zaire Williams. No Derrick Rose. The list goes on. The Grizzlies was down a bunch of guys, but the 76ers were also without Joel Embiid, who was I would say who was the MVP before his entry of the NBA season. The Sixers are also without Tyrese Maxey, who made the All-Star game this season. So two of the best players in the Eastern Conference, let alone the two best players on the Philadelphia 76ers. But with all that being said, the game was ugly for a while. Grizzlies were down as much as 15 points. Dominant effort, second chance points in particular with the Philadelphia 76ers. I think they had 33, 35 by the end of the game. But the Grizzlies overcame it just from a complete performance for the team. Jaren Jackson Jr. returning to the lineup, 30 points, 11 rebounds, 10 of 25 shooting. So, he's not being cheated when he's getting those shots up. But Jake LaRavia, Vince Williams, Santi Aldama, Luke Kennard, all of those guys chipped in and played a big role. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON20 for $20 off your first purchase. The Grizzlies won their second consecutive game against the Philadelphia 76ers in this game. I think it's the first time they've won at Wells Fargo Center in their last 4 appearances. And we got to start with Jaren Jackson Jr. Comes back after missing the past 3 games, right quad, tendon soreness, and all of that good stuff. And first half, he gives you 12 points, a couple blocks, feeling his way through the game. But it was the second half Jaren Jackson Jr. put together that really stood out to me. Now, at the surface level, you look at it, the 76ers are an undersized team. Most of the guys that were guarding him, there was a lot of Tobias Harris matched up against him. There was a lot of Paul Reed, who's kind of playing the center position. He ended up with a double-double, but overall, just can't match Jaren Jackson Jr. from a size perspective. And that's the reason Paul Reed fouled out in part. Jaren's just super physical, 6'11", 240, 50-pound guy, and he's coming right at you every single possession. But Jaren, there was no rust there. 30 points, 11 rebounds, 6 blocks for him. Again, it's a smaller Sixers front court, and he took advantage of it, not only on the offensive end, by just getting to his left hand and making those shots. But defensively, the 6 blocks. We haven't seen Jaren have as many of those games as he did last season. But he was on his A game. He was a huge reason why the Grizzlies beat the 76ers. Another reason why the Grizzlies beat the 76ers is Vince Williams continues to stuff the stat sheet. At this point, I'm more surprised when he's not putting up at least 10 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. This game, he had 17 points, 7 boards, 9 assists. So still looking for that first triple-double. This is something, it's not just us talking about. Vince Williams himself has said that He knows that he's flirting with that triple double, and it's something that he wants. But it's not just the 17, 7, and 9 that stands out to me. It's the 2 steals, it's the block, it's the guarding, the top perimeter options on the Sixers. And again, they were without, DeAnthony Melton, Tyrese Maxey, and all those guys. But the guys that were in there did not shoot the basketball great. Tobias Harris, remember, he got a max contract from the Grizzlies. From the 76ers once upon a time. 3 of 12 shooting from the field, 8 points for Tobias Harris. Buddy Hield, guy that they acquired, at the trade deadline, 6 of 17 from the field, 15 points. Another trade acquisition, Campaign, who started in the lineup, Memphis native, by the way, 6 of 17 shooting from the field. Kelly Oubre led the Sixers in scoring, but 25 points, but he did so shooting 7 of 21. The Grizzlies held Philadelphia to 38.2% shooting from the field. Again, so Paul Reed did finish with 17 and 11, but he fouled out. He did that in 24 minutes. Big reason part of this was Vince Williams and his activity on the defensive end, as well as making 2 3-pointers on 3 attempts and being an effective stat sheet stuffer on the offensive end as well. Santi Aldama and Luke Kennard also had big games. I think we are officially on three-peat watch for Luke Kennard. He led the NBA in three-point percentage the last 2 seasons. Grayson Allen got the day off yesterday, and Grayson Allen entered yesterday with a 0.4% percentage point lead ahead of Luke Kennard in three-point field goal percentage. And Luke Kennard in this game shot 3 of 6 from three-point range, 5 of 10 overall, 15 points for him as well. Didn't do much else, 2 rebounds, 2 assists and whatnot. But the three-point shooting of Luke Kennard, we're very close to this guy 3 consecutive years winning the three-point crown in the NBA from a percentage standpoint. And I know I've been one of the people who said things like, you can go out and get a little bit lesser of a shooter and a better defender, and you can get similar impact. I still believe that, no matter how well he shoots the ball going forward. But Luke Kennard is valuable. Do not get me wrong there. When this team is healthy, when he's coming off the bench, the threat of Luke Kennard, not just as some, inconsistent, when he's hot three-point shooter. This is a guy, you look at that stretch at the beginning of the season, he struggled a little bit. Ever since then, he's been in fuego. It's been going up and going in. So Luke Kennard is back in his groove. He's been in his groove a while. And that $14.7 million team option that's got to be picked up at the end of the season. Each performance, he makes it look easier and easier on the Grizzlies side to make that decision. Another performance that stood out to me in this game was Santi Aldama. Santi Aldama finished the game with 17 points. Yeah, okay, that's cool. But it wasn't just the points, for Santi that stood out to me. It was the 3 blocks, which was a season high. It was the 7 assists, which was a season high. Now let's go all the way back to last season. If you remember, we were talking to Taylor Jenkins about who would step in for Jaren Jackson Jr. when Jaren was hurt and the Grizzlies needed, a starter at the power forward spot. A bunch of names, were in the conversation. Kyle Anderson, not Kyle Anderson, but, Santi Aldama. Even there was the consideration of going small, maybe David Roddy, Zaire Williams, and all these different guys. Dylan Brooks going small, but Brandon Clark, etc. But the Grizzlies went with Santi Aldama. And when Taylor Jenkins talked about him, he talked about the fact that Santi has the ability to be an extra playmaker in the lineup. And we've seen the flashy passes here from time and time. But that game on yesterday against the Sixers with the 7 assists, that's one you want to put on the film when you say, could Santi Aldama be a really effective playmaker at the NBA level? You turn on that film, and most people will say, yes, 6 of 13 shooting from the field, 3 made 3-pointers on 8 attempts, which is pretty good as well. The 3 blocks really stand out to me because Santi, if you look at him, he's kind of a frail guy, not really overly big. And each offseason, when I've talked to him, we talked about, hey, Santi, what's next? What's the next level of improvement for you? And it always goes back to getting stronger. You've seen it in this game in stretches. You've seen it all this season. Guys will attack Santi and have some type of success from the standpoint of he's just not strong enough yet. Well, guess what? He still had 3 blocks in spite of that in this game against the Philadelphia 76ers. So encouraging performances all around. This wasn't some one-man show. Yeah, Jaren had 30 and 11 in his return, but Vince Williams off the bench, Jake LaRavia, what he did, and a bunch of guys really stepped in to make this a complete performance for the Memphis Grizzlies to pull off the upset after trailing by as many as 15 points against the Philadelphia 76ers. A big reason the Grizzlies pulled off that upset was Jake LaRavia. Look, man, I've been hard on him. Joe's been hard on him. We got to talk about Jake LaRavia a little bit. We got to give a guy a couple flowers. He's played well the last couple of games. But before we get to that, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? You ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. It has class-exclusive Google built in. Is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Look, gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen screen in its information system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. But Nissan's incredible lineup doesn't just stop there. The 2024 Nissan Pathfinder has room for up to 8. So I know that's for you out there. You got the big family, right? You got a couple kids, got to get in the car with the hubby, with the wifey, whatever the case may be. Go check out that Nissan Pathfinder. It has room up to 8. It's an expansive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capability with 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds of towing. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, even the Nissan Armada, and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk about Jake LaRavia because we got to talk about the guy. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I am Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. I want to thank you guys for tuning in with us on today. In our first segment, we recapped the Grizzlies' 115-109 victory. A lot of players stepped up. Gigi Jackson didn't have the best of nights himself, but it's not just Gigi. Vince Williams was really good. John Conchar was, solid in his stretches, even though he only scored 3 points overall. A bunch of players contributed. We talked about Jaren Jackson Jr., Santi Aldama. The list goes on. One of the names that had just as big of an impact as some of those other names was Jake LaRavia. Now, I know what I've said. I know what some other people in the Memphis media have said. I know what some people in the fan base have said, whether it's in our YouTube comments, whether it's on X in comment sections or in the spaces and things like that. I know what you guys said about Jake LaRavia. And truth be told, there aren't a lot of people out there that still believe in Jake LaRavia. And not a lot of people. Some, yes, but not a lot. I've seen, like Parker Fleming, he was on the show a couple days ago. He talks about, Jake LaRavia is starting to find his groove in certain ways and things like that. Then there are other people like my guy Anthony Sane who says, it doesn't really mean anything. He's still slow, as Anthony Sane would call him. So with all that being said, Jake LaRavia has put together back-to-back encouraging performances. And this is important to point out from the standpoint of this. Jake LaRavia is finally getting an expanded opportunity. And this is something, right before he came back, when he was about to come back, we were talking about it. And he was saying, he just didn't seem super confident in his ability at that point. But he felt that this opportunity was there for him. And right now, Jake LaRavia has done a good job of taking advantage of that. 19 points, 13 rebounds. Second consecutive double-double. Before these games, never had a double-double. Now he's had 2 consecutive. He's not being cheated. 19 points is a whole lot more than 10. And when you talk about rebounding, 13 rebounds is a whole lot more than 10 as well. But I have a couple of observations. Like, just watching Jake LaRavia play at this point, because he had 3 blocks too. And a couple things stand out to me. And the first thing I want to touch on is his physicality. Like, we used to talk about it a lot with David Roddy because, it's big body Roddy and all that good stuff. But people forget Jake LaRavia is 6'8", 235 pounds. We talk about, Lamar Stevens, physicality and things like that. Jake naturally has some of that. Naturally. Now, whether he's the same type of dog and is going to battle, like Lamar Stevens, I mean, that's probably another question, another answer, and whatever the case may be. But Jake LaRavia, back-to-back encouraging performances, and I feel like it's enough at this point. We'll see where it goes from here. But to give you those 2 performances is enough to say, hey, hold up. We still got this guy under contract next season. Like, let's see where we stand with Jake LaRavia. And I would like to know where you guys stand as well. Make sure you jump into our YouTube comments or whatever the case may be. Let me know how you feel on the emergence of Jake LaRavia as well. Because, 19 points, 13 rebounds. He looks really good. There's another area of his game that stood out to me, and we'll get to that in a second. But before we get to that, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So let's get back into this talk about Jake LaRavia. We just touched on the physicality, but there's another area of his game that I'm starting to kind of, just from an observation standpoint. And this is something I've noticed before. Like, I noticed it in the G League. I noticed it with the Memphis Hustle, but I've kind of had to tell myself, to be careful of what you see with the Hustle, because I saw David Roddy average over 18, 19 points over there. I saw Jake LaRavia average over 20 points per game over there. And it doesn't always directly translate. But with all that being said, when you think about with the Grizzlies and Jake LaRavia and the fan base, I'll never forget, when we were at Media Days and Jake LaRavia was kind of asked, does he feel like he's in that same conversation with Desmond Bane and Luke Kennard as shooters? And he didn't hesitate. Said, oh, for sure. He's in that conversation. But what I've come to learn, and this is just my opinion, he could prove me wrong or right, whatever the case may be. I don't think Jake LaRavia is some great spot-up shooter. That's not his game. What if I said, go look at the college highlights, go look at the Wake Forest stuff, and tell me what you see. You see a guy who is scoring in a bunch more ways than just standing in the corner waiting on the ball, and when it comes to his hands, knocks down an open three-pointer. I'm confident enough to say right now, that's not Jake LaRavia's game. Whether it's, look, the spot-up shooting stuff and whatnot, what he brings to the table, yeah, that's cool. That's real cool. But at the end of the day, let's call it what it is, right? That's what we do on Locked On Grizzlies. We call it exactly how it is. And if you go back to last season, LaRavia's rookie season, he shot 33.8% from three-point range. This year, he's taken more attempts, and this was coming into the last game. That was on 2 attempts per game last season. This year, at 2.8 three-point attempts, he was at 21.3% entering yesterday's game. So all that's leading me to believe that, look, yes, Jake LaRavia can shoot the ball. Yes, Jake LaRavia is confident in his ability to shoot the ball. Yes, Jake LaRavia actually knocked down 2 3-pointers in the game that we keep referencing. He also shot 7 of 15 from the field. You know what I'm noticing out of that? The guy is more than a spot-up shooter. In fact, the spot-up shooting is not even the strength of Jake LaRavia's game. 15 shot attempts, only 4 with 3-pointers. And he just looked more confident out there. When the ball was in his hand, there wasn't any hesitant dribbles. There wasn't pick the ball up and throw it to someone who's had the ball more, had the ball in their hands more and whatnot. No, it was workout time for Jake LaRavia. And I'm really interested to see what you guys think. My take on it right now is I need to see it for a couple more weeks at least, not just some 7 game Linsanity stretch or whatever the case may be. I need to see it all the way through the rest of the season because we talked about how Zaire Williams, Derrick Rose, and even to a lesser degree, we'll talk about him in a second, Yuta Watanabe. Like there are some guys out there who are on the roster bubble for next season. And Jake LaRavia isn't far from that conversation. But if he keeps putting together performances like he did on yesterday, 19 points, 13 rebounds, 3 blocks, I think there's a case to be made for Jake LaRavia potentially being an impact player for the Grizzlies. I'm not ready to make that case yet. Give me a few weeks. I'll give a more definitive answer on him being that type of player. But right now, I choose not to be fooled. We've seen these stretches. We've seen these highlighted moments and whatnot. But at the end of the day, Jake LaRavia looks much better, and that's got to be a good thing for the Memphis Grizzlies. Speaking of looking much better, Scottie Pippen Jr. We haven't talked about him in a while. There's an update out there on Scottie Pippen Jr. We're going to talk about that and more in the next segment. But before we get to that, we got to talk about our friends over at Gametime, because Gametime is where you go. You can download the Gametime app today. Use the code Locked On for $20 off. The thing about Gametime is, look, I always say this. I've had frustrating experiences with buying tickets in the past. You think the tickets, the seating looks good from one angle, and then you get there and you say, oh, this is not the type of seating that I thought I had. And on top of the money that you paid, on top of the fees that you're paying, these parties to book through. Well, guess what? You shouldn't have to worry about when you buy tickets to your next event, those type of things. And that's why Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last-minute details, all-in prices, and views from your seat. Gametime has the best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets for you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. All you got to do is download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Because this is what makes Gametime special. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind when you purchase. Look, you can see the view from your seat before you buy, which is important for somebody like me, so you can know exactly where you want to arrive. All-in prices show your total up front, so there's no hidden fees or anything like that. You know exactly what you're getting, and it's a great deal before you check out. Buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. All you got to do is download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKED ON, LOCKED ON, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, and download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies, we got to talk about some updates around the rest of the team. The game was encouraging, but there's much more to be encouraged about in the Grizzlies. Let's talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. Recapping the show up to this point, we talked about the Grizzlies' comeback win against the Philadelphia 76ers. Big win for the Grizzlies from that standpoint. You lottery glazers probably don't like that win. Probably say, it's hurting our draft positioning and whatnot. But nevertheless, winning is winning. So, good win for the Grizzlies. We highlighted Jake LaRavia in the last segment. Just let me know what you guys think in the comments on Jake LaRavia. Are you opening up to the idea that this guy could be a player? Is it not fooling you the last couple games? It's like, yeah, I'm not fooled by that. Whatever the case may be, let me know what you guys think. But the point guard position, we talked about it. John Morant, Marcus Smart, Jacob Gilyard. None of those guys are around at the time being. Derrick Rose, he's out for the next 3 weeks at least. Not around for the time being. The Grizzlies into this game, Luke Kennard and John Conchar were pretty much the starting backcourt. But help is on the way. According to Mike Wallace over at Grind City Media, he talked to Taylor Jenkins before the game, and all things are encouraging on the Scottie Pippen Jr. front. The 3-week timeline, I believe, that he was given is actually today, from when he would be reevaluated. But Taylor Jenkins has already said that Pippen has been, playing in scrimmages, and they're aiming for him to be back next week. I think that's important. Not important from a standpoint, oh, the Grizzlies are going to win more games and make a push for a play-in or anything like that. But I've said it. If no one else has said it, I've said it. Look, Scottie Pippen Jr., from what we saw early in the season when he was dealing with, the game manipulation and things like that because he had to play, a certain amount of games since he's still on a two-way contract. But when he was out there, he was producing. And if he continues to play that way, why isn't Derrick Rose expendable? I'm going to say that again because a lot of people on here know how high I've always been on Derrick Rose, but I'm going to keep it a buck. I'm going to keep it honest with you. And the thing is, if Scottie Pippen Jr. continues to score the basketball really well, continues to facilitate the way he did when he comes back, that makes Derrick Rose expendable, in my opinion. So looking forward to seeing when we will get to see Scottie Pippen Jr. on the floor. He's one of the guys that basically, is playing for his NBA career right now. Like this is the opportunity for him to turn a two-way contract into a standard contract and not look back. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that situation unfolds because if Scottie Pippen Jr. get rid of somebody, and one of those candidates at this point looks like Yuta Watanabe. And again, I remember Jordan Goodwin, we were talking to him before one of the games. He was Yuta's teammate with the Phoenix Suns and whatnot. He called Yuta Watanabe one of the best shooters in the NBA. If you watched him over the past couple years, you probably felt the same way when he was with the Nets and whatnot. But this season, Yuta's not knocking down the shots at the same level for whatever reason. And some of his misses have just been plain bad. I'm talking not hitting the rim, side of the glass bad, whatever the case may be. But still a terrific shooter. My point is, Taylor Jenkins has him kind of like riding on the bench right now. A DNP for Yuta in this last game, despite the Grizzlies dealing with all the injuries that they're dealing with. A DNP for Yuta Watanabe. And it makes me wonder, yes, he has a player option at the end of the season, but the Grizzlies are going to reach a point where they can't keep all these guys. And that's why we've entertained the idea of a Zaire Williams being traded. That's why we've entertained the idea of a Jake LaRavia possibly being traded, and whoever else that may be in that group. But at the end of the day, I look at it like this. Yuta Watanabe, I mean, the coaches are going to tell you everything without telling you with how they play these guys on the court. That's all you got to look at. Another DNP for Yuta Watanabe is definitely concerning for his long-term value with the Memphis Grizzlies. Gigi Jackson only played 22 minutes in the win, finished with 6 points. I think he shot 3 of 10 from the field. And I'm getting a little antsy now because Scottie Pippen Jr. is on the way back. Yes, he can play on the ball. Yes, he can play off the ball. But how much longer until we see Gigi Jackson in this so-called role where he's a primary facilitator? That's kind of where I'm at now. I really want to see it because, look, I'm tired of looking at Gigi's numbers, and you look at his assists, and in this game he had 1. So he's not racking up a lot of assists, but he's going to get an ample opportunity to be that type of player for the Grizzlies coming off the bench. I think Taylor Jenkins is leaving him in that role because that's going to be a role that he's probably going to play going forward for the Memphis Grizzlies. We talked about a lot in this episode, and guess what? On tomorrow's episode, me and my co-host Joe Mullinax will be back together to break down all things Memphis Grizzlies with you guys as well. Locked On has launched the first ever national 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV. I got Amazon Fire TV, so all the Amazon Fire TV people out there is now available on Amazon Fire TV. In the free Fire TV channels app, Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Coming up on Locked On Grizzlies on our next episode, me and Joe Mullinax will be back together talking all things Grizzlies. We got a lot to talk about, as I've said. Yes, the season isn't going well, but there's still a lot of stories and headlines to be tackled on the Memphis Grizzlies front. But appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies today. Make sure you continue to tune in to us everywhere. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen. If you're watching on YouTube, shout out to you as well. Shout out to all of you guys, and continue to support Locked On Grizzlies for me and my co-host Joe Mullinex. And remember, Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, I'm Damichael Cole. We'll see you on Locked On